welcome to T-News 9 channel. Today, we're bringing you a special reading from the novel, The Cases That Wait. This is chapter 31, The Ones We Missed. Closing one file doesn't reopen the others. The shelf didn't change, but I saw it differently now. Rows of files, names, dates, some solved, some labeled inactive, a polite word for abandoned. I pulled one at random, didn't recognize the name. That worried me. I read the summary. Missing adult. No struggle. Assumed choice. Case closed in 3 weeks. Efficiency again. The voice returned, not accusing, curious. How many times did you believe that? I didn't answer. I kept pulling files. Patterns don't announce themselves. They repeat quietly. A woman who left town. A man who started over. A teenager who ran away. No bodies, no goodbyes, just conclusions that made paperwork easier. The efficiency of it all felt wrong, like a shortcut taken in the dark. Each file I touched felt heavier than the last, not with paper, but with the weight of unanswered questions. I sat down. The chair creaked like it remembered me. These weren't mistakes, they were habits. I realized something then. Evan wasn't the case that haunted me. He was the one that woke me up. Because for every Evan we found too late, there were others we'd never gone back for. The ones who slipped through the cracks, dismissed with a simple, convenient explanation. The quiet disappearances that no one looked into twice. I felt a chill run down my spine, a cold realization that this went deeper than just one case. I opened a new notebook, blank. That mattered. I wrote one line at the top. Unfinished does not equal unsolved. Outside, the city moved on. Always does. People disappear without permission, sometimes with help, sometimes because no one asked the second question. I closed the notebook, not the files, not yet. The work was just beginning. This wasn't about closure anymore. It was about justice, for all of them. Chapter 32 of The Cases That Wait, titled, She Left Voluntarily. When adults disappear, we often assume it's a choice. Her name was Lena Brooks, 34 years old, no criminal record, no history of violence. The report on my desk was clean, a little too clean, actually. The official finding, left voluntarily. That's usually where the conversation ends, where the file gets shelved. But something felt wrong. I read the last confirmed sighting again. A gas station, 6:40 in the morning. She bought a coffee, paid with cash. It all seemed so normal, so routine that it was easy to just stop caring. But then, her car was found 2 days later. It was parked legally. No signs of damage, and the keys were still inside. Now, think about it. People who decide to leave don't just abandon their cars, they sell them, or they take them with them. That clean conclusion started to unravel. A little voice in my head started talking, focused and clear. Convenient conclusions only survive because people get bored. So, I dug deeper. I checked her phone records. There were no goodbye calls, no final texts to friends or family after 6:41 a.m. Just silence, an abrupt, total silence. Planned disappearances usually taper off. They don't just drop off a cliff like this. Her apartment told an even more confusing story. The plants had been watered recently. There was a pile of laundry half folded on her bed. A single suitcase was missing, but only one. People who are planning to leave for good don't pack in halves. They make lists, they prepare, they take what matters. I read the original officer's note again. It said, subject appeared calm on the gas station camera, but calm is subjective. It really depends on how much time you spend getting to know someone's patterns, their life. Then, I found it. The one small detail that completely destroyed the left voluntarily theory. Her shoes, her heavy work boots were gone, but her comfortable running shoes, the ones you'd grab if you were making a run for it, were still sitting right by the door. People who are running away take comfort with them, not steel-toed boots. I closed the file. Not hard, but carefully. This wasn't a mystery anymore. It was a mislabel. Someone didn't take Lena, they interrupted her. And an interruption doesn't announce itself with a big fanfare. It just waits, quietly, to be noticed. She didn't leave. We just stopped looking. Chapter 33. The Last Person. The last person isn't always the killer, but they always matter. The cashier remembered her, not clearly, and that was the problem. People remembered danger, not normal. She was polite, he said paid, left, that's all. I checked the receipt time again. 6:40 a.m. The camera footage filled in the silence that memory leaves behind. Lena entered alone. She left the same way, but she didn't walk to her car. She hesitated at the door, looked right, and then walked out of the frame, toward the service road. There was a man standing there, just off camera. He was close enough to speak to her, but not close enough for us to see. A voice returned, precise. She changed her direction. I slowed the footage down, going frame by frame. Lena smiled once. It wasn't a big smile, and it wasn't forced. It was a smile of recognition, not fear. And that mattered. Strangers don't usually earn smiles like that. Then, the cashier remembered something else. Someone asked for directions. He said, generic enough to forget, but specific enough to matter. I pulled the traffic cam feeds. A delivery van passed the station at 6:41. It paused, then rolled on. It wasn't parked, not loading anything. It was just waiting. The license plates were partially blocked by mud. It looked intentional. I wrote a name down in pencil. Mark Delaney, a former maintenance contractor. He worked routes. He knew the service roads. No priors, no alarms. That's how people like him stay invisible. I didn't call him yet. You don't warn the last person. You confirm them. I looked back at the footage, at Lena's smile. That's what stayed with me. Trust, given just once. That's all it takes. She wasn't followed. She followed. Chapter 34 of the gripping novel. The cases that wait. Disappearances don't need darkness, they need doors. The van wasn't suspicious, and that was exactly the point. It was white, unmarked, and just old enough to blend in on any street. Every neighborhood has one. This one belonged to Mark Delaney. Registered clean, insured, inspected nothing about it, screamed danger. I checked the inside. The cargo mat had been replaced recently, but the bolts underneath were scuffed. Something heavy had been in here, shifting around. People think violence leaves obvious stains, but it doesn't always. It leaves patterns. And then, that quiet voice in my head returned. Vehicles don't kill, they enable. I pulled the GPS data. It showed pauses, not full stops. A gas station here, a service road there, a quick stop under an underpass. Each pause was just short enough to be explained away, but also just long enough to change someone's entire future. While searching, I found a hair. It wasn't hers. It was dyed a cheap, synthetic color. It came from a wig. People who plan these things don't risk being recognized. They borrow faces. In the glove box, I found a stack of printed maps. Old ones. Service roads were highlighted by hand routes that cameras always ignore. I checked the toll data, and sure enough, there were no records. He knew exactly where not to drive. The van didn't trap Lena. It offered her something. A ride, maybe some help. A bit of familiar language that made her feel safe. She stepped in willingly. In disappearances, doors don't slam shut. They close softly, almost silently. I stood back and looked at the van again, seeing it in a new light. This wasn't just a crime scene. It was a system, mobile, private, and utterly forgettable. And that's precisely why it worked so well. She didn't just vanish into thin air. She was transported. Chapter 35, The First Lie. The first lie tells you where to look. I didn't mention Lena, I mentioned the van. People relax when they think you're a step behind. Mark Delaney sat across from me. His hands were clean. His voice was steady, too steady. How long have you owned the van? I asked. Years, he said. Just for work. He smiled when he said it. That mattered. People smile when they think they've said the right thing, when they believe they've passed a test you haven't even given yet. I nodded. I didn't challenge him. Silence always does better work than questions. It invites people to fill the space, and they often fill it with things they shouldn't. You were near the gas station that morning, I said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. He shrugged. Probably, he said. I drive all over. And that was it. That was the lie. Not because the statement itself was false. It was a lie because it was offered too early. He hadn't been accused of being in that specific spot. He offered a wide range before I had even pinned down a location. People widen their stories when they're trying to shrink the truth. The little voice in my head returned, sharp and clear. He's already managing distance. He's trying to create an alibi out of open road. I asked him about the local service roads. He answered too quickly. He knew their names, their turns, their dead ends. People forget routes they don't use regularly. He didn't. He knew them like the back of his hand. So you didn't see anyone unusual that morning? I asked, keeping my tone casual. No, he said. Then, he added, just traffic. Another mistake. Heavy traffic doesn't happen on those old service roads. That's why people use them to avoid it. He leaned back in his chair, visibly relieved. He thought he'd navigated the conversation successfully. He thought he'd passed. And that's when people really start to talk. Hard world out there, he said, shaking his head with false sympathy. People disappear all the time, he said. Disappear, not go missing, not leave, disappear. The word implies erasure. It implies an action taken by someone else. I didn't write a single thing down. I didn't need to. The first lie a person tells isn't meant to convince you. It's meant to test you, to see how much you already know. He'd just run his test, and he had failed spectacularly. He lied to see how close we were. We were much, much closer than he thought. Thanks for watching T News 9. Follow us for the next chapter.